Okay, so just checking audio. Hello, Maya TV. My name is Alicia. I'm your host today, and I am joined by Jeremy Pallay, who is a writer, director, actor, and producer. And we're going to talk about some of his projects, some that he's done in the past, some that are coming up. And I want to start off by asking Jerry, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Yeah. So I did want to start with asking you where you grew up and how that sort of fed into you wanting to be an artist involved in the film industry.
Yeah. Actually, I was born in Queens, New York, and interesting enough, my mother delivered in the emergency room, and the very room where my mother delivered, the actual tiled emergency department room. Many years later, the hospital changed its name, and I worked in that very same room.
Really?
Yeah. And I found that out because I asked somebody in the street when I went back with my oldest kid and took some video of places I grew up and things that I knew now that I'm on the West Coast to show my kids where I lived, where I worked and grew up. And I asked somebody in the street, said, was this hospital always this hospital? It's now called St. John's. At the time I was born, it was called Horace Harding Hospital. No, it used to be Horace Harding Hospital. And I realized that I worked in a very emergency department where I was born.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I heard that you started acting from a very young age. Do you remember when that was and what your first sort of jobs as an actor were?
Sure. This goes back a ways. I think it was 5th grade. I don't think it was 6th grade. And I was in a Gilbert and Sullivan play. I think it was HMS Pinafore. In that I played a little kid, and I was a little kid. I was kind of short for my age at that time. And my father was in my class, Richard Stebby. I had to jump on his back to look at the king or the queen coming down, from the ship. So in the last dress rehearsal before the formal presentation of the play, knowing that I was shorter than him, Richard dropped down really low, and knowing that he was taller than me, I jumped really up, and so I flew right over him and landed in the audience. So, and that was funny, and again, as a relatively small, shy young kid, it made an impression on me, like, oh, this is kind of fun, people laughing and enjoying the presentation, even though it was an accident. But that was my first experience, which kind of, I think, instilled the bug in me. At some point I want to do more of that type of stuff.
Yeah, so it really made you want to do more, and you learned a lot from it too, right? Like, and you learned to project your voice.
Well, actually, it was later on. The second time I had a significant role in a movie, I was in Guys and Dolls. I played Lieutenant Brannigan, who is the police officer, if anybody's seen that play or that movie. And I came out, and again, I was still a short little kid. It was now in 8th grade. And I came out, and I said, any of you guys seen Nate in Detroit? That's the line. And Mr. Firestein, who was the head of the presentation, he was director, he screamed and said, Pallay. I said, Mr. Firestein yelling at me. He said, you ever heard a cop sound like that? I said, well, actually, I've never heard a cop. I'm a kid. I don't really listen to cops, So he said, well, that's not how cops sound. Okay, how do cops sound, Mr. Firestein? Well, first of all, the voice is low, and they project their voice out. Because I had a little squeaky kid voice, And so I said, okay, we'll do it again. And I came out the second time, I did the right way. I said, any of you guys seen Nate in Detroit? And I did it right. So just one director note, if you will, and I've acted that way, and I've even talked that way in my life because of Mr. Firestein in 8th grade.
So it's really interesting that a director had such an impression on you because you went on to direct your own work, right?
Yes.
So what were some of your influences for film and directing that made you want to do it?
Well, obviously a lot of things that we've all seen in our life, whether it's Spielberg. I do like a lot of different directors. I've seen so many good films, and they leave impressions on you. Probably Kurosawa is one of my favorites. I think a lot of people's favorites. The Seven Samurai. I'm not sure if I have the name right, but there's so much in it, so much dense, great production, and how he made that movie. So when I make a film, I say, well, can I do anything like that? It's a goal to aim for, to try to be as good as the Kurosawa, Akira Kurosawa, a Japanese director, and not expecting to meet that, but if I get some of that into my film, then that's a success, for me.
Yeah.
And I go on and on, there'll be many more, but that's 2 of my favorites.
Yeah. So, you got that note from that director in the theater. Do you feel like when you cast someone for some of the films you've done, do you have a specific thing that you were looking for in an actor?
Well, oddly enough, some of my favorite performers are children because they're innocent and they're eager. And sometimes they give the most amazing performances. They may need a couple more rehearsals either with me as the director or with their parents, but it works. A film I did called Orangeade, it's a little tiny budget short film that I did. One of my neighbors 2 houses down, I put her in it, Ivana Kenny, and she blew it away. I mean, she did such a good job that at the film festival we won an award. She won the award for Best Young Female Actress in a Short Film. And she was young, 8 years old, and petite at that time, and 200 people in the audience stood up, standing ovation for her.
Mm-hmm.
She got her award, she's walking away with this award, and they're like, wow, blown away. And yeah, I get some credit because I wrote it, I produced it, I directed her, but really, it was her performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was so cool to see her be acknowledged for that. And that happened again. I just did another project, a short project. And the two girls who are in it, who have medical challenges, if you will, and most I could share it, but I don't want to share it right now, were just amazing. Especially the short one, Irie, that's her name, it's a Jamaican word, means happy, I think it means, I'm not sure it means that, but they're not Jamaican, but that was the name their mother gave them. And she just blew me away. She's gonna get an award for that if I do the film festival route in that film, which I don't know yet what we're doing with it. We're in post-production, almost done editing it. Just to make sure, I like working with kids, but also I like adults. You know, sometimes the more veteran actors and actresses are great. I worked with David Carradine, he was incredible. Did 2 scenes with him, which is, for me, the highlight of my life. I played Jesus on a cross, no disrespect to anybody, but I looked more like Jesus than I do now. And I was on the cross, and David Carradine was talking. I was in 2 scenes with him. That was my high point as an actor. He was a natural, so obviously, an amazing actor. If you don't know David Carradine, you should watch Kill Bill, a million other films. But not everybody is necessarily as experienced as poised, if you will. So sometimes experienced actors are really great, and sometimes they're too self-assured, and sometimes they're not as open to direction, if you will. So sometimes a new actor is even better. So this thing I just film I'm in post-production on, called Revival with an E, purposely misspelled Revive EL rather than AL. There's 2 actors in one scene, and one of them is an ingenue actress who's never acted before, a lovely gal, Leah Fox, and she just does a great performance in it. And she's playing opposite John Barrymore, who's 5th generation Barrymore. They've been making films for 100 years, these people. There's a theater in New York City on Broadway called the Barrymore Theater. That's that family. So John Barrymore is Drew Barrymore's half-brother. And the 2 of them in a scene, a veteran actor and a first-time actress, have this amazing scene. And the scene, I won't get too much into it, but it's a scene involving tarot cards. Now, I'm not promoting tarot cards, but it has to do with what the story's about. And watching that performance is just really good. It's really a great scene. So to add into that performance, I have a singer, who I don't want to say her name yet because we haven't confirmed that yet, but she is going to do a song that we're going to lay in over that. And I have some ideas for that. I asked her to write the song, but if not, I have some ideas for that. Well, not really a songwriter, but I have some ideas about it. And that we're going to record and lay over that scene with Leah Fox, John Barrymore, and the tarot cards. It's an amazing scene. If you do it right, it's going to be the best scene in the movie, though we'll see how that comes out.
Oh, okay. We'll wait for that one. So you are also a writer, and that started very young for you. Do you remember what you started writing?
Sure. When I was young, the first thing I started writing was poetry. One of my favorite musicians, Jim Croce, died in a plane crash many, many years ago. This is going back, dating me a bit. And I was bothered by that. He was just a great writer, singer and performer, that I wrote a poem about him. And then, since that time, I've probably written 200-300 poems. I don't keep track of it. My favorite poem that was written when I went to Shanghai, I was actually dating a woman in China, from Qingdao up north, and it was not quite working where I hoped it would. I'd gone to China, one of many visits to China, to ask her to marry me, and we were having some interference, and there's a lot of cultural issues about that. I won't get into all that detail unless you want to hear that story. It's a pretty long story, but
Even if you want.
well, you know, I think because she was an only child, the parents thought that I was going to marry her and take her to the States, and then they'd never see her again, and nobody would take care of them. I think that was what the main problem they had with me, because I'm American, I wasn't really moving to China, but they could have come to America. I think they just didn't know what my motive was, so to take this girl from China and leave them there, well, that's a big concern, as understandably it is. So culturally, I think that was part of it. So while I was waiting up in Qingdao, trying to figure out what was going on, my nephew was actually working in Shanghai. So I said, well, let me go visit my nephew. And so I went down to Shanghai, and I went to the Jade Buddha Temple. If you've never been there in Shanghai, you have to go. It's this little Buddhist temple in the middle of the metropolis of downtown Shanghai. It's this tiny little place. They have this giant jade Buddha temple, white jade Buddha temple. And I know a lot about jade, oddly enough. I have a little bit of collection and put a piece of it in one of my films. Not white jade, it's pretty pricey usually, and so I went in, and while I'm walking past this giant jade Buddha statue, I just imagined, because I'm a creative person, that the Buddha was talking to me. Now, I'm not Buddhist, I'm not anti-Buddhist, but I'm just not Buddhist, but I just imagined that the Buddha was talking to me about this woman. And the Buddha and this woman kind of exchanged places. Suddenly it was the woman there, then it was the Buddha again. So I wrote a poem, but that's probably the best poem I ever wrote, or second best poem I ever wrote, sorry do I say. There's another one I wrote in New York, which is another interesting concept. So I've written a lot of poetry. It just stuff comes to me, I just stand and I write it. I usually don't rewrite it, and so it maybe needs work, but I just write stuff on pretty much spur of the moment.
Where did you transition poetry to writing for the screen?
Later on in life, after I got married, and the marriage, we were having some problems, I decided to expand my boundaries, took some acting lessons, and took some writing lessons, basically with the same guy. And I started writing screenplays, and I've been writing since then, probably since I wrote my first screenplay. And the first one was the one that we made into a film with David Carradine. I've probably written about 24 screenplays, mostly feature films, a couple of TV pilots, and I've got probably another 30 that I've in various stages of development. I've written 1 page, or I've written 50 pages, just process. So there's always something else I can go back and write on, because I keep starting an idea and then I finish the one I most want to work on and then go back to the other ones.
When you're writing, do you tend to be working on different projects at once? Do you tend to focus on one? Or do things just come to you and you're like, oh, this needs to go in this work? Yeah,
it used to be I didn't like to multitask, but as part of my job, and actually I'm a physician also, I'm used to multitasking, doing several things at once. So eventually that became kind of the way I write, produce, direct, which actually is a great background, because I know I can have several balls up in the air, and I can work on this one before the next ball comes down like a juggler. That's been a very productive way for me to do things. So again, I'm writing a screenplay right now that's based in Los Angeles and Okinawa and Tokyo and Kyoto, and that's about, actually I'm on my second draft. I probably need 4 drafts before it's where I want it to be, and I'm going to give it to a couple of my friends who know more about Japan and the martial arts that are in it than I do. So that's in development while I'm in post-production on this other thing, while I'm in negotiations on these other 2 projects that we've sold this year that I unfortunately can't say much about because they're confidential lawyer discussions, and they said you can't talk about stuff like that, which you'll hear about eventually though. They'll be on air.
You mentioned earlier when we were debriefing if you had never gotten writer's block. So do you think there's something in your process that has lended itself to that?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's almost surreal that of all the screenplays I've written, of all the poems I've written, and the novel I've written, and the next one I'm in the middle of writing also, and that's another thing, I've never not known what to write. So I'm not saying I'm a great writer. I think I'm a good writer, but not necessarily an A-list writer, if you will. But there's always, my ideas always pop into my mind. So I'm lucky that way. You could say blessed, if you will. I'm able to write. Inspiration just comes into me, and I always know what to write. Mm-hmm. And then I have to rewrite it maybe 500 times, but I've been fortunate that way, and that creativity is good, because being mostly a left-sided brain person, being a professional, a physician, stuff like that, is kind of one-sided brain. So using now the right side of my brain, being a creative person, kind of balances everything. I think that's good for everybody to kind of be able to have, scientific, mathematical side and the artistic side, and using both of those in your life makes your life more interesting, more balanced, and probably, and the studies probably say that, you know, to avoiding, you know, some of the illnesses of old age, especially dementia, it's good to use both sides of your brain, have both talents going. So if you're, you know, a boring physicist, I'm not making fun of physicists, it's nice to be able to once
You
in a
can
while.
say that you're a physicist, right?
No, I'm a physician, not a physicist.
You're a
Yeah,
physician.
yeah. But it's nice to go in and play the guitar or to go sing songs, stuff like that. So it's good to have a balance of like that. I think that helps you keep your brain active and alive besides eating well, avoiding bad habits. I'm not gonna get a whole medical lecture here. I think that will help you to have a long, healthy life and maybe to a point delay some of the ravages of older age, including dementia, which is one of our concerns for, you know, in time, almost everybody will have that as an affliction. If you live long enough, 117 years, right, so, yeah.
So you mentioned that project that involves that Japanese culture, you mentioned the poetry, you know, that came from China. Is that where you draw inspiration, places that you visited or you would like to go?
Well, actually, I actually have not been to Japan except passing on the way to Pakistan, where I went to my friend's wedding. But yeah, it's stuff I've been to, or it's stuff that I've read, or sometimes it's stuff that I've just researched on the internet. So honestly, a lot of stuff about Japan in this script that I'm writing, since I haven't been there, I did a lot of research. So I'd be not writing stuff that was completely inappropriate or not correct. In fact, in my second draft of it, I'm cleaning up some of the things that I was incorrect about. Like there's a pathway that used to lead from Tokyo, which was called Edo long ago, that leads to Kyoto, and that road is called the Tokaido path, or whatever it's called. And the Tokaido Road, I think maybe that's what it's called, was memorialized in a lot of Japanese woodblock prints, and I collect some Japanese woodblock prints too. So I wrote part of that into the script. And then I watched, after that I watched some videos about the Tokaido Road, and I actually was incorrect about that.
Mm-hmm.
So on my third draft, I'm gonna go back and correct that. And just recently I learned about some of the places in Kyoto that are actually better than the temple that I used as part of the locations in the script. So I may go back and change the location of that too. And then the final thing, the fourth version of the script, that script will be to review the martial arts and then present it to a friend of mine who actually is a black belt, a master in Shorin-ryu, Okinawan karate. So that, because I don't really know that much of Shorin-ryu karate, he'll go back and review that and see how accurate or inaccurate it is, and then give me some advice about that, hopefully. And maybe, if I get it funded, maybe he'll be in it too. It'd be nice if he was in it, so.
When you're writing, do you tend to edit by parts, or do you like to get all of it out and then go back? Or does it depend on the project?
Usually I'll write, but I'll write in a day's time, whether it's I write for 15 minutes or 2-3 hours. I don't write for 12 hours straight unless I'm in a deadline issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will usually go back the next day, after some sleep, some rest, dinner, whatever, see a movie, whatever, and go back and review what I wrote. So I know that I'm way off or not way off. And then I'll write some more from that. And then after I finish it, of course, then I'll go back and review it again, because I know that it always needs work. And I encourage people, as some writing clues to any of the writers out there, is that write. Keep writing. And my best advice is, if you have an idea in your brain, in your heart and your soul, then spend a few minutes on it every day, 15 minutes even, or not every day, then 3 days a week. Or if you're too busy, can't do it 3 days a week, then just on Friday night after you're done with the work week, or if you work on the weekends, then during the week. Just take some time and write it. If you find it's a challenge to write, everybody's challenged to write. Very few people who are just natural great writers, There's not that many Steinbecks out there, right? So if you're gonna write, you have to put something on paper. And then it may be a giant hill, it looks like it's an impossible thing, Sisyphus pushing the stone uphill, right, the boulder uphill. But if you write 15 minutes, let's say once a week, then at the end of 52 weeks, you'll now have a lot of writing. If you write 3 days a week, you'll have more. So you can't be discouraged, you have to push yourself and try to get something on paper. If it's just in your mind, it's not gonna go anywhere. And it's not likely, unless you're a wealthy person, that somebody's gonna write it for you. Or if you don't wanna write it, then dictate it, or I got the program now, you can dictate it and it'll print it out for the wording for you. If you're writing scripts, of course, Final Draft Pro I recommend, it's not a commercial for them. You really should have a good program for that. But again, the main thing is, if you have an idea, take notes, write it down, write it before you forget it, and just keep at it every day. If you don't keep at it every day, or once a week, or whatever your time allots you, you never do it. If you say, I can't do it, I don't have any time, that's not really true, because I'm a very busy guy, okay? I'm a long distance runner, I've run 4 marathons, I still run long distance, I've raised 4 children, you know, I have a career, I mean, I'm a writer, producer, director, I mean, all the stuff that I do, I don't have any time, but I've made time. So I have all this stuff that I've written, and I recommend too, this is my advice too, is please either record it with the Writers Guild of America West, it's not a commercial for them either, or copyright it with the Library of Congress. I highly recommend you protect your work, so somebody else can't steal it outright. Yeah, people can steal it to a point, but they can't steal it outright, so you have to protect yourself. I'm surprised how many of my friends who don't do that, and really should.
That's really good advice, especially with things like AI, you know, writing scripts and things like that. You know, it's important to protect your work.
Especially with AI now.
Yeah. When it comes to the logistics, I know a lot of people don't handwrite, but do you ever find yourself doing that? Is it all in files on your computer? How do you like to keep yourself organized?
Well, because I'm older than you, I used to handwrite, yeah. But now what I do is I do, most of it's online, so.
Yeah.
And like a lot of my poetry I actually posted online to Facebook in response to a friend's beautiful fashion stuff that she posts, really great stuff, Sue Wong. And now I don't know what all those poems are. I'd have to hire an aide just to go back and find all the different poems that I wrote there. But I wrote, to me it's not so much for my personal files, much just for putting it out there in the world to make people just be creative, inspire them to think about stuff. I mean, yesterday I posted on, I think, Instagram first and rolled over to Facebook, a picture of I think it was a white ibis. I wrote a little blurb, it's sort of a poem, but it's only like 8 lines long. Just a little thing about me and the bird, and I got a really good picture of this bird in my backyard, which was odd. And just to make people think and to kind of escape the little ho-hum days about promoting themselves or their personal problems or the politics and craziness of the world.
So how do you go from being, you know, writing little Instagram blurbs to poetry to, you know, screenplays to now your own novel?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the novel thing's an interesting thing because, you know, having written poetry and written screenplays for the large part of my life, I have friends who've written novels, and I always said, in my mind, writing a novel is a hard thing to do. And so one of my friends has written 4 or 5 novels already, I'm not sure how many now. I say, wow, that's really great, Chris Dookie. I could never write a novel. And he says, no. Novels are easier than screenplays. He says, no, novels are harder than screenplays. Screenplay is like a little short story. It's just blown up, you know, the way it's structured. And we had this discussion, it was almost an argument, about which is harder to write, a screenplay or a novel. So again, we had different points of view about it. But one day this idea came into my mind about this novel that I wrote, and I started writing it. And it took me almost a year to actually finish it, so it does take longer, I think, than a screenplay. But it turned out that after I rewrote it a couple times, I closed all the loops, I put all this subtle James Joycean type of stuff into it, and now I have this incredible novel that I wrote. So now I can say I've written a novel and I've written screenplays. So maybe you can do both, but it was almost quirky that I came up with this idea, and it's based in Wales and Sweden, a little bit of Harry Potter meets Lord of the Rings meets Beowulf, and it came out incredible. It's just I'm surprised that I wrote a novel, frankly, but it came out great.
How do you find that it differs from writing a screenplay? Like, how would you adapt that for like a film, for example?
Well, I hope to make a film out of it, to be honest with you, but actually a lot more TV and film now is actually coming from literary stuff now. More and more that's happening that way, and me and my business partner are working on that as well too. But you know, you just got to say, does this have the suspense? Does it have the story arc, the character arcs in it? Does it have appeal to the general public? And sometimes you go out on a limb. Some of the stuff I've written is pretty far out there, and so sometimes I've dropped that. I had an idea actually I thought of, and I dropped it because I didn't think it would have really commercial appeal. And then I saw it on TV. Somebody else did the exact same idea, which was surprising to me. So it's good that somebody else did it. It wasn't the best project. But some of these projects I think are just, they just haven't been done. Most stuff I've come up with is it's just stuff that just popped in my head. I've never seen or heard of it anywhere else. So again, this book is an interesting idea about a school teacher who becomes involved with the heir to the throne in Sweden. And rather than get into all the details, we don't have time for that. I just developed over a year, and it just came out incredibly. I'm just actually pretty happy about that. Waiting for the right literary agent to pick it up. I don't want to self-publish it because I don't think it'll have the audience. Like my friend's first book, he sold 1,000 copies of it, which was incredible for a first-time novel. But most people, self-published, 100 people read the book, and that's not the audience I'm aiming for. So it just.
And you can't
It
say
is
much,
appealing.
it's not out there, you know, you gotta protect your work, and can you give us a title, or are you still keeping that to yourself?
No, well, the title tentatively is called Beware Day Hapats. Very strange name, but that's the name of it. Beware Day, D-A-E, Hapats. Don't even ask me how to spell that. But just like it sounds pretty much, Beware Day Hapats. And it's a story of demons and good people and the school mistress involving the children in that battle. It's an interesting story, very, very interesting. It has two actually romantic storylines. One there's actually 5 sections in it. It's 5 big chapters, lots of little chapters within it. And the first love story takes place in the first section. It opens and closes totally in the first section. And the main love story is arced over the entire 5 chapters of the book. So very interesting stuff. It's something that I think appeals to pretty much everybody, young people, old people, men and women, stuff like that.
This is your first novel, right?
That was my first novel.
Yeah.
It came out incredible. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not bragging about it because never in a million years, as I alluded to, would I ever thought I could write a novel. You know, I wrote a novel and it's really good. Everybody who's read part of it or all of it just said this is really dense, but really, really, really good, which is incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible that you went through, you know, writing poetry, small bits, and all through films, and now a full-length novel. That's incredible. You did give us advice for any upcoming writers. Do you have any other, or maybe even directors that you could, you know, share with the world?
Well, I did. One of my friends, Michelle Manu, just directed a horror film, and she asked me for some advice, and so I gave her some advice. I sent her a couple of YouTube videos, including an excellent one about Akira Kurosawa, which I can't allude to right now, there's no time to do that. But, and I gave some other advice. She was going in, and being a woman, going to a production with mostly men, as I expected, she ran into some resistance, some male resistance, okay? I'm gonna leave it at that, okay, in the age of Barbie, right? And so I told her a couple of words of advice as a guy, hey, what she could do to try to handle that, and how to prepare for that, you know, talking about, she was gonna do some exercise the day before. I don't know if she did or not. I said, you can do exercise before you film it for 12 hours at night in the cold. I highly recommend you do a shorter thing, you know, eat healthy, don't drink a lot of alcohol, you know, don't drink tons of coffee in the day, so in the middle of the night you're exhausted.
That's the physician in you talking
Yeah,
to
right, exactly,
right?
yeah.
Like, not just,
You know?
you know.
Eat the right things, you know, you don't eat tons of sugar, you're gonna get down in the middle of the night about that, I don't know. So, and then I gave some, of course, advice about knowing, as a director, knowing what it is you're filming, know what it is that you're expecting the characters to do, and more advice. I mean, we can't go through all that right now, but I gave her some advice, humble advice. I wasn't knowing if she felt it any value at all, but she felt it did help her, and I'm gonna talk to her some more about it now after she's done the filming, get some feedback about how she did, how she pushed back against the guys who were, you know, having their macho attitude or whatever it was, and how my advice helped her. If it did, and if it helped her, great. I hope it did. You know, I'm not here for the accolades. I'm there because I want her to be successful. She's a wonderful, brilliant woman, and I would love to see her be a great, famous director one day too. Besides, she's also a lawyer, a martial artist, and a wonderful person.
That's incredible. And it was so lovely to get to talk to you about your projects, and so much. I hope your novel goes amazing, and it gets received really well. And Jerry, where could we find you for your future projects? Do you have an email, a social media?
Sure. I don't have a lot of social media because I'm like, you know, pretty much self-contained entity, if you will. So there's only so many things you can do in your life. But my Instagram, I think, is at GD Pallay, if I have that right. So, and some of it's not movie stuff, some of it's personal stuff, but that's okay. And a lot of it is the pictures. It's just a sense of my vision about what's there, how things look better. Like the last thing I posted about this ibis, it's just a really interesting picture. and I edited it so the picture fits the little blurb I have attached to it about the ibis and me interacting. The ibis lands in my backyard and we're eyeball to eyeball pretty much. We're not near each other, but we're looking right at each other. And you can also reach me at my email, which is the name of my company, TRLT Incorporated @hotmail.com. TRLTINC@hotmail.com.
That's your production company, right?
That's my production company, though I do also work with my business partner, Bo Carson, so we're working on several projects together too.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We had a lovely chat. And I'd like to thank everyone at Maya TV for watching, and stay tuned for more.
And thank you for having me here.
Thank